Right now, something is hard, not difficult in the way that is secretly manageable, not hard in the way that looks hard from the outside, but feels fine from the inside, actually hard, the kind of hard that sits in your chest when you wake up, that is already there before the day has given you a reason, the kind that makes ordinary things feel heavier than they should, that makes the next step feel further away than it actually is. Maybe it has been hard for a while, long enough that you cannot quite remember what it felt like before this, long enough that the difficulty has started to feel like the permanent texture of your life rather than a season you are moving through. And the question that keeps arriving quietly underneath everything else you are doing to function and show up and keep going is this: how much longer? Not how do I fix this, not what is the solution, just how much longer do I have to do this? That question is the most honest one available in a hard season, and it deserves an honest answer. Here is the most honest thing that can be said about it. You do not know how much longer. Nobody does. But here is what you do know. You have kept going before, in situations that felt exactly like this, in seasons that felt exactly like they would never end, in moments where the next step felt exactly as impossible as this one does right now. And you took the step anyway. You are here, still here, which means every previous version of that question was followed by more going. That is not nothing. That is the most important evidence available, and that evidence is what this is about. Here is the first thing you need to understand, and this matters more than most of what you will hear about resilience. Resilience is not the absence of breaking. Most people imagine the resilient person as someone who does not break, who moves through hard things without being significantly affected, who has some internal armor that keeps the difficulty from reaching the places where it would actually hurt. That is not resilience. That is suppression, wearing resilience's clothing. Real resilience is something completely different. It is the ability to break and still continue, to be genuinely affected by something hard, to feel the full weight of it, to not be okay in the way that requires performance, to fall apart in the specific ways that the situation calls for, and then to gather what is left, not all of it, what is left, and take the next step with what is left, not because the broken person is as capable as the whole one, because the next step does not require wholeness. It only requires movement, and movement, however small, however slow, however incomplete, is what keeps going actually means. But here is what you are missing about why hard seasons feel like they will not end. They are not supposed to feel like they will end. That is the nature of being inside something difficult. From the inside, the hard thing is all there is. The perspective that would allow you to see it as temporary is not available from within it. You cannot see the end of a tunnel from the middle, and the inability to see the end does not mean the tunnel has no end. It means you are still in the middle. Here's what this means practically. The feeling that this will never end is not information about whether it will end. It is information about where you are in it. You are somewhere inside it, far enough in that the beginning is behind you and the end is not yet visible, and the mind, unable to locate the end, and unwilling to tolerate the uncertainty of not knowing when this will be over, concludes that it will not be over. But that conclusion is not drawn from evidence. It is drawn from the absence of evidence, from not being able to see what is around the corner. The corner exists. The question is not whether this season ends. Every season ends. The question is what you do in the meantime, in the middle, where the end is not visible, where the beginning is behind you, where all you have is what is directly in front of you. The next hour, the next decision, the next small thing that is actually possible. Here is where it gets specific, because the general instruction to keep going is not helpful when the going is genuinely hard. What is helpful is understanding exactly what keeps going requires in the specific conditions you are in. The first thing it requires is narrowing the horizon. When life is hard, the future is overwhelming. Not because the future is necessarily worse, because the future, seen from a depleted present, looks like more of the current difficulty extending indefinitely. And that vision, accurate or not, is crushing. The human mind cannot sustain hope across an indefinitely difficult future. It can sustain hope across the next day, sometimes across the next hour, sometimes across the next 20 minutes. The narrowing of the horizon is not defeat. It is the appropriate adjustment of the system to conditions where the normal range is not available. The question changes from "how do I get through this?" to "how do I get through today?" and when today is too much, to "how do I get through this morning?" and when this morning is too much, to "what is the next single thing I can actually do?" That single thing, just that one, not the one after it, not the full landscape of what needs to happen. The one thing directly in front of you. That is what keeping going means when life is genuinely hard, not the grand march forward, the next small step. Here is the thing about small steps that most people in hard seasons resist. They feel insufficient. The scale of what is hard seems to demand a response of equivalent scale. A large difficulty should require a large response. A serious problem should require serious action. A crisis should require crisis-level effort, and so the small step feels like an inadequate answer to the size of the problem. But here is what is actually true about small steps in hard seasons. They are the only steps available, not because you are weak, because the resources required for large steps are genuinely depleted. Sleep is compromised. Emotional reserves are low. Cognitive capacity is reduced. The system is running on less than it normally has, and demanding large steps from a depleted system is not strength. It is the misapplication of a standard designed for normal conditions to conditions that are not normal. The small step from a depleted person is more impressive than the large step from a rested one. It costs more. It requires more relative to what is available. It demonstrates a kind of persistence that the easy conditions performance cannot replicate. Take the small step, not because it is all you can do, because it is what actually moving forward looks like when the conditions are what they are. Now here is something about the specific experience of being in a hard season that most people never say out loud. The hardest part is not the difficulty itself. It is the loneliness of carrying it. The specific experience of functioning in the world, of showing up, of doing what needs to be done, while carrying something inside that nobody around you fully sees. The smile that covers the weight. The fine that is performed because not fine requires an explanation. The ordinary conversation had while something extraordinary is happening in the interior. Most hard seasons are lived largely in private, not because people choose secrecy, because the full reality of what is being carried is rarely something that can be shared completely. It is too complex, too internal, too difficult to articulate in ways that would produce the specific kind of understanding that would actually help, and so it is carried mostly alone, in the ordinary days, while functioning, while showing up, while doing the next thing. If this is where you are, you need to hear something. The fact that you are doing this, carrying what you are carrying while still moving through the days, is not ordinary. It looks ordinary from the outside. From the inside, it is an extraordinary act of sustained human courage, the kind that does not look like courage, the kind that looks like just getting through Tuesday. But it is courage, and it is worth naming, even if only to yourself. Here is the midpoint truth. The hard seasons are not interruptions to the life. They are part of it. This is the reframe that changes what the hard season means. Most people experience the hard season as a deviation from the life that was supposed to be happening, as if the life should have been smooth and the difficulty is a problem that arrived to interrupt the smoothness, and the energy goes into waiting for the difficulty to pass so the real life can resume. But the real life does not exist on the other side of the difficulty. The real life includes the difficulty. The real you is not the version that exists once this is over. The real you is the person who is going through this right now, who is getting up each day, taking the next step, carrying what needs to be carried, doing the ordinary things that still need doing despite the weight of of everything else. This is your life, not the prelude to it, not the waiting room. The life and the person living it, however imperfectly, however depleted, however far from the version they would choose, is real, is here, is doing something genuinely difficult and genuinely worth acknowledging. Let us talk about what the hard season is building, because it is building something, not in a comfortable way, not in a way that feels like progress, not in a way that would lead you to choose it, but building nonetheless. Here is what the research on post-traumatic growth consistently shows. People who move through significant difficulty do not simply return to who they were before it. They are changed, not always in ways they would have chosen, not always in ways that feel like improvement in the midst of the difficulty, but in ways that are real and that persist. The capacity for empathy deepens because the experience of genuine difficulty produces an understanding of other people's genuine difficulty that comfort cannot produce. The clarity about what matters sharpens because difficulty has a way of burning away the things that felt important and were not, leaving the things that actually matter more visible than they were before. The relationship with one's own strength changes because every day that the person kept going is evidence, specific, personal, inarguable evidence that they are capable of more than the comfortable life would ever have revealed. The tolerance for uncertainty grows because uncertainty is the native condition of the hard season, and surviving it builds a relationship with not knowing that the certain life never develops. These are not consolation prizes, they are real capacities built from the specific material of the hard experience, available to the person on the other side of it in ways they were not available before. The difficulty was not good. What it built is. Here is something about the people in your life during a hard season, because this is where the carrying either becomes lighter or heavier. Some people in your life will be the right people for this season, not necessarily the people you expected, not necessarily the closest ones. The right people for a hard season have specific qualities. They do not require you to be okay when you are not. They do not perform discomfort with your difficulty in ways that require you to manage their discomfort. They can sit with the weight of what you are carrying without immediately reaching for a way to fix it or resolve it or make it smaller. They make it safe to be honest about how hard it actually is without turning the honesty into a problem that needs to be addressed. These people are rare, and they are worth finding and staying near in a hard season. Not because they can fix anything, because the experience of being genuinely with someone who sees you clearly and stays is one of the most restorative things available. It reminds you that you are not alone in it, even when the specific weight is one only you can carry. You are not alone in carrying it, and there are people who are the wrong people for a hard season. Not bad people, just people whose specific way of engaging with your difficulty makes the difficulty harder. The ones whose anxiety about your situation transfers to you. The ones whose unsolicited advice is actually about their own discomfort with your pain. The ones who need you to be getting better on a timeline that is about their reassurance rather than your reality. The ones who respond to your honesty about how hard it is by minimizing or reframing or redirecting to something more comfortable for them. Recognizing these people is not about blame. It is about honest resource management. In a hard season, your energy is limited. Every interaction either adds to it or draws from it. And the interactions that draw from it, that require you to manage someone else's response to your difficulty while managing the difficulty itself, are an expense you cannot easily afford. Limiting those interactions when possible is not unkind. It is the appropriate management of limited resources. Let us talk about something specific that helps in the hardest moments. The moments when the next step is genuinely not visible, when the resilience language feels empty, when keep going sounds like something someone says who does not know how hard the going actually is. In those moments, one thing works more reliably than almost anything else. Extremely small action, not toward the resolution of the large thing, not the action that would make a meaningful dent in the difficulty. The smallest available action that is genuinely manageable, the glass of water, the few minutes outside, the single response that can be sent, the one task that can be completed, the one call that can be made, not because these small actions solve anything, because they interrupt the paralysis, the specific state of being overwhelmed by the scale of what is hard and unable to locate a point of entry into any of it. The small action provides the point of entry. It says to the nervous system, movement is still possible, not the movement that resolves everything. Movement. And movement, even tiny movement, changes the state. The state changes from paralyzed to slightly in motion, and slightly in motion is the beginning of more motion, not dramatically, incrementally, but the increment is real, and real increment accumulated across hours and days and weeks of a hard season is what getting through it actually looks like. Here is something about the relationship between rest and resilience, because this is where most people in hard seasons make the most costly mistake. They stop resting, not deliberately, because the hard thing demands so much that rest feels like something that happens after the crisis is managed, after the situation stabilizes, after there is finally enough space, and the space never comes, because the hard thing keeps demanding, and the rest keeps being deferred, and the system running without the maintenance it requires degrades. The capacity for managing the hard thing decreases, the threshold for breaking lowers, the perspective that would allow some sense of the larger picture to remain visible contracts. The small things that would normally be manageable start to feel like major problems, and the hard thing, which was already hard, becomes harder because the system carrying it is now compromised. Rest in a hard season is not a luxury. It is the most strategic thing available, not because rest makes the hard thing easier, because rest maintains the system that has to carry the hard thing, and the system maintained is the system capable of continuing. Sleep when it is possible to sleep. Eat when eating is available. Move the body even when the motivation to do so is completely absent. Locate the activities that genuinely restore even a fraction of what the difficulty is consuming. These are not self-care in the performative sense. They are maintenance of the instrument you are using to get through this, and maintained instruments last longer. Here is something about hope in a hard season, because hope is the thing most at risk, and hope is the thing most required. The specific challenge of maintaining hope when hope is not supported by visible evidence is one of the defining difficulties of a hard season. You cannot see evidence that this will get better. The evidence available points in the other direction. The visible trajectory is not encouraging, and yet the people who make it through hard seasons almost universally report that something kept them going. Not certainty that things would improve, not evidence that they would. A willingness to remain open to the possibility, to not close the door. The refusal to conclude in the middle of the hard season when the perspective required to make that conclusion accurately is completely unavailable. That this is permanent, that the difficulty defines the future, that the season is the whole story. The willingness to leave the door open is not optimism. It is the honest acknowledgement that from inside the hard season, the future is genuinely not visible, and unseen things have not been determined. The future is not yet written, and a future that is not yet written is not yet a bad one. Keeping that door open, however slightly, is what allows the next day to be possible, and the next day is the only future you actually need right now. Here is something that the hard season eventually teaches most people. The person they are during the difficulty is not lesser than the person they are in comfort. They are different. They are slower, more careful, less able to do many things simultaneously, more dependent on the basics, more aware of what actually matters because everything else has been stripped away, less impressive in the ways the comfortable self is impressive, but more honest, more essential, more clearly the actual person rather than the performing one. The version of you that is getting through a hard thing is not a diminished version. It is a version operating in conditions the comfortable self was never tested in. And operating in conditions you were not tested in is a form of growth that the comfortable conditions cannot produce. The capacity built through the hard season is not available to the person who did not go through it, which means something about the person on the other side. Not that they are stronger in some abstract way, specifically stronger in the specific specific ways that this specific difficulty required, more able to tolerate the uncertain, more clear about the essential, more capable of the small step when the large one is not available, more honest about what they need, more present in what is actually happening. These are not compensations for the difficulty. They are the actual results of having been through it, built in you, belonging to you, available to the version of you that comes out on the other side. Here is something worth naming directly. Some hard seasons require help beyond what you can provide for yourself, not as weakness, as honest accounting. There is a threshold in some difficulties beyond which the internal resources, however developed, are not sufficient, where the weight is too heavy, where the isolation has gone on too long, where what is happening inside is beyond what the ordinary management of a hard season can address. Reaching for professional support in those conditions is not failure. It is the accurate reading of a situation that requires more than the ordinary tools. A broken bone does not require more willpower to heal. It requires specific treatment. Some emotional and psychological injuries are similar. They are not healed by trying harder. They require specific support from someone trained to provide it. If what you are carrying has that quality, if it has the weight of something that ordinary resilience is not reaching, getting that support is not an alternative to keeping going. It is a form of keeping going, the most honest and most effective one available in those conditions. Here is where we leave this, not with an instruction, not with the promise that everything will be fine, with the honest truth about what keeping going actually means. It does not mean being okay. It does not mean feeling strong. It does not mean having the perspective or the hope or the energy that the inspirational version of resilience suggests. It means taking the next step, just the next one, not the whole path. The next step, which might be very small, smaller than it looks like it should be, smaller than you feel like it should have to be, but real, actual, forward, and then the step after that, and then the one after that. Not because you know where the path ends, not because you can see the light at the end, because you are still capable of one step, and one step is enough. One step repeated becomes a path walked in the dark without knowing the destination, through conditions you would not have chosen, with resources lower than you would have preferred, but walked step by step, day by day, hard moment by hard moment, until one morning the weight is slightly less, the step is slightly easier, the next day is slightly more visible, not because the hard thing is over, because you have been moving toward the end of it for longer than it feels like, and every step taken in the dark was real. Even the ones you do not remember, even the ones that felt like they were not enough, even the ones where keeping going meant nothing more than getting through the next hour. They all counted. You are still here. That is the evidence. That is the whole evidence, and it is enough.